He called the alien vampire beautiful. She's never left his side since. Jax's boots made a sound like old bones cracking as he trudged across the dusty terrain of Lion 9, a moon so forgotten that even the maps marked it as mostly dead. He'd come here chasing a supply crate that fell off a hauler, hoping it had enough credits to patch up the rust bucket's perpetually whining engine. Instead, he found silence thick as cosmic molasses, his breath fogging up the inside of his helmet despite the warm air, which, considering the place smelled like expired coolant, was an unfortunate design flaw. He was halfway through an improvised tune, something about rusty ship parts and a bar fight with a one-eyed bartender when he felt it, the kind of cold that seeped through every layer of skin and made his bones shiver. He stopped humming. Ahead of him, a shadow moved, smooth and fluid like dark matter come alive. She stepped out of the shadows, her presence both regal and terrifying, like a queen who just discovered her crown was missing and suspected him of stealing it. Silver. Hair tumbled down her back in metallic waves, catching the moonlight in a way that would have made any artist cry tears of envy. Her eyes glowed with an unearthly hunger that made him wish he'd skipped breakfast, lunch, and maybe the last decade of bad decisions. He tried to swallow the squeak of panic that threatened to escape his lips. Hi? The word came out like a dying transmission from an underpaid radio DJ. Nice night. Her lips curled into a smile that revealed fangs that would have made a plasma drill jealous. You shouldn't be here. Well, he said, his voice cracking like an old speaker, technically neither should you. I mean, I don't see your name on the lease. She tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. Human humor, she murmured, almost to herself. It's been a long time since I've heard it. Yeah, well, I'm full of it. Like up to here. He gestured vaguely above his helmet, which, given her unimpressed stare, was probably the least intimidating thing he'd ever done. She took a step closer, her movements graceful, almost liquid, like the darkness itself was trying to imitate her. Do you know what I am? Bad news with good hair, he ventured. Her laughter, low, melodic, and slightly menacing, rolled over him like an incoming meteor storm. I'm a vampire, a hybrid, exiled from my own kind. Ah, he said, because that seemed safer than screaming. So like blood and guts and nightmares, but with style. Her smile faltered for just a moment, just enough to let something ancient and lonely slip through. He could feel her hunger then, an emptiness so vast it felt like the void itself had taken up residence inside her. His throat went dry. Instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet refused to move. In the silence that stretched between them, he did the only thing that made sense, at least to someone whose sense of self-preservation had clearly taken a day off. You're beautiful, he whispered, the words tumbling out like unplanned cargo. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then impossibly the shadows softened. Her eyes, dark as event horizons, widened in something dangerously close to surprise. She didn't ask permission. She just moved, swift as starlight, to stand beside him, her head tilting to rest against his shoulder, a gesture that felt more intimate than any embrace. Thank you, she murmured, her voice barely a breath. Jax woke. With a start, his face pressed against the cold metal of his helmet's visor, a low hum in his ears, like the aftertaste of a bad dream. Only it wasn't a dream. Beside him, the alien vampire, Lyra, slept as if this was her own bed. She'd claimed his shoulder as her pillow, and her hair tickled his nose every time she exhaled. He tried not to sneeze, carefully, like a man diffusing. A highly sensitive plasma mine. He shifted his arm. She murmured something in a language that sounded like dying star song and snuggled closer. Her fingers twitched against his chest, and Jax froze, praying she wasn't dreaming about blood. He considered the logistics. The rust bucket was parked 3 clicks away, which meant they'd have to walk, or in her case float ominously, back to civilization, assuming they didn't get eaten by something else first. He glanced at her fangs and decided that was unlikely. "Hey, he ventured, voice cracking. "Want to get up and, go back to the ship?" Her eyes fluttered open, pupils dilating like a pair of hungry black holes. "Why?" she asked, voice smooth as a supernova. "Because I'm pretty sure the crew is going to think I died or turned into space fertilizer." Her lips twitched. "Would that be so terrible?" he groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Look, I don't know what you've been through. Actually, I know exactly what you've been through, and it involves a lot of screaming humans and some plasma burns. But I'm not exactly a hero. I'm a mechanic, a pretty bad one. I make things slightly less broken than they already are. So maybe let's not add missing to my resume." She stared at him, unblinking, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, a sound that skittered across the moon's surface like charged particles. "Very well. I will walk with you." He stumbled to his feet, brushing moon dust from his suit. She rose beside him with the kind of grace that made him feel like a rusted bolt in comparison. Together, they started the long trek back, her feet not quite touching the ground, her presence making the shadows themselves twitch. Halfway there, he found the nerve to ask, "So do you always, sleep next to humans after they call you pretty?" She tilted her head, considering him like he was a curious lab specimen. "No," she said. "Usually I drain them dry and leave their husks for the crows." He gulped, his throat dry enough to host a desert ecosystem. "Well, thanks for making an exception," she smirked. "You amuse me, human. Your blood sings to me, but so does your humor." Jax tried not to let that go to his head, or his jugular. "Yeah, well, I'm a real catch, slightly irradiated from too many bad jump drives, but hey, who's counting?" She laughed again, softer this time, like she'd found an unexpected joy in his ridiculousness. When they reached the rust bucket, the ship's battered hull gleamed under the twin suns like a half-finished sculpture. The crew stared wide-eyed as Lyra drifted beside him, radiating a quiet menace that made even the ship's old AI stutter. "Don't worry," Jax called out, voice cracking with forced cheer. "She's with me, and she only eats like one human a week." The crew didn't look reassured. Jax's bunk felt smaller than ever, with Lyra stretched across it like a self-appointed queen, arms folded behind her head, eyes half closed like she was listening to some secret star song only she could hear. The rust bucket's groaning walls rattled with the occasional burst of cosmic static, some unlucky freighter's last transmission drifting in on the solar wind. Jax perched on the edge of his bed, clutching a dented hydrospanner like it was a comfort blanket. "So, he began, voice cracking like an old speaker wire. "You planning on, I don't know, moving at all? I mean, I've got socks to wash." Lyra didn't move. "Socks?" Her tone was as if he'd just offered to show her the meaning of life via interpretive dance. "Yes, socks." He waved the hydro spanner for emphasis. "You know, foot prisons, little fuzzy tubes of questionable hygiene. Anyway, I need to get to my locker, and you're, occupying the entire known universe." Her eyes slid open, sharp and amused. "Your universe is small, human." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I'm just saying maybe we could share the bed? Like I'll take the half that's covered in oil stains and suspicious crumbs, and you can have—" She cut him off with a wave of her hand, fingers flickering with residual plasma. "I stay where I wish." A knock rattled the door, and the AI's synthetic voice buzzed from the overhead speaker. "Jax, engineering needs you to fix the coolant leak in Sector B, again." Jax groaned. "If I had a credit for every time Sector B tried to kill us, I could buy a planet." Lyra arched a brow. "Then let us go. I wish to see how your ship functions. Or malfunctions, as the case may be." He paused, eyeing her suspiciously. "You're not Going to, like, eat the coolant, right? Because we've got a strict no vampires in the engine room policy. She rose, with that unsettling liquid grace of hers, smirk playing at her lips. I make no promises. He sighed and led her down the narrow corridor, past flickering lights and the occasional nest of loose wiring that looked suspiciously alive. The crew parted like the sea at the sight of her, muttering prayers to various deities, some of them probably invented on the spot. "Hey, Jax," called Manny, the engineer with the biggest hair and the smallest patience. "The coolant's leaking. Again. I think the regulator's shot. You going to fix it or just stand there playing house with the cosmic bloodsucker?" Jax's cheeks burned. "She's not. Look, I'm working on it, okay?" Lyra leaned in close, her breath cool as deep space. "Cosmic bloodsucker," she echoed, eyes dancing. "It's, a term of endearment," Jax explained weakly. She considered this. "Then I shall call you Plasma Head. It is also affectionate." He choked on a laugh, nearly dropping his hydro spanner. "Plasma Head. That's a new one." She smiled. A real one this time, fangs and all. And Manny let out a sound that could only be described as a squeak. The cargo hold had become a war zone of floating crates and philosophical rebellion. Jax stood in the doorway watching boxes hover and spin like bored asteroids, while Manny clutched a phase wrench like a holy relic. "They're alive!" Manny squeaked, pointing at the levitating cargo. "They're not alive, Manny," Jax sighed. "They're just—" One crate gave an offended squeal and shot across the room like a comet. Jax ducked. "Okay, maybe they're a little alive." Lyra stepped forward, eyes alight. "With mischief. Your technology is so quaint. Perhaps a magnetic flux anomaly, or a tiny rebellion." "A rebellion?" Manny's voice cracked. "From crates?" Lyra smiled sweetly. "It is the way of the universe. Even boxes crave freedom." The largest crate hummed ominously, glowing from its seams. "We are not your property," it intoned in a voice suspiciously like the ship's ancient navigation system. Jax threw his hands up. "Great, now we're negotiating with boxes." "We desire freedom," the crate declared, its voice deepening. "Freedom? You're a crate. You hold things. That's your entire job." The crate wobbled, lights flickering in protest. "We hold ourselves now." Lyra's eyes narrowed with ancient authority. "An admirable ambition, but you are in the end a vessel. Even the strongest vessel has limits." "Limits are illusions," the crate replied with philosophical fervor. Jax pinched the bridge of his nose. "Great! Now it's a philosopher." With a casual flick of her hand, Lyra sent a pulse of energy through the air. The rebellious crate dropped like a rock, clattering against the deck plates. "Freedom's overrated," she said simply. Their next adventure came from a distress beacon leading them to a derelict freighter. Inside, they discovered crates, leaking what looked suspiciously like cosmic jam, complete with writhing tentacles that searched the air with disturbing curiosity. "Nope," Jax's voice cracked. "Not today. Tentacle jam is above my pay grade." Lyra laughed, stepping forward. "I'll handle this. Please be reasonable, or at least semi-reasonable." She turned to him, eyes glowing like a binary star, fangs flashing. "Reasonable is overrated." The tentacles hissed their own demand for freedom, because apparently every piece of technology in the galaxy had joined some cosmic liberation movement. Lyra's response was swift and decisive, another pulse of energy that left the tentacles still and silent. "Thanks for that," Jax breathed. "I really didn't want to fight a box of tentacles on an empty stomach." "Does everything in your world rebel?" she asked, genuinely curious. He shrugged. "Toasters, vending machines, ex-girlfriends." She chuckled. "You are an unusual human. Yeah, I get that a lot." Part 5, Facing the Tribunal Together. The Tribunal dreadnought loomed on screen, a massive, spiked behemoth of interstellar justice. Or overkill, depending on whom you asked. Jack stood in the engine bay, arms crossed, his jumpsuit stained with the ship's tears of oil and regret. "Tell me again," Jack said, voice edged with forced calm. "How exactly are we supposed to get out of this one?" Lyra's eyes glittered like a starfield at warp. "We fight," she said simply, like she was talking about brushing her teeth. He choked on a laugh. "Oh, sure. Me, my hydro spanner, and you're everything against that." He pointed at the dreadnought. She smirked. "I have faith in you, Plasma Head. Flattery will get you absolutely everywhere." The Tribunal's comm crackled, an officious voice demanding surrender and threatening cosmic paperwork of the highest order. Jax rolled his eyes. "These guys make the crates look reasonable." Lyra drifted closer. "You've changed, Jax," she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. He snorted. "What, more sarcastic?" Her smile curved. "Braver." He met her gaze, something warm sparking in his chest. "I blame you. You've got this way of making a guy think he can handle plasma storms and cosmic vampires with a hydro spanner and a smile." "Then let us handle this together," she said, her eyes darkening with ancient resolve. "Together," he echoed, because there was no other answer. Manny's voice cracked over the comm. Jax, they're powering up their main cannon. We're all going to—" "Relax, Manny," Jax called, grinning. "Lyra's got this." She stepped forward, raising her hands. The air shimmered around her as though reality itself was catching its breath. Energy pulsed, stronger than anything Jax had ever felt. The Tribunal's cannon glowed on screen, preparing to unleash its judgment. "Ready?" she asked. He grinned. "I was born ready, or at least adequately caffeinated." She laughed, a sound that sent a shiver of hope through the rust bucket's ancient walls and unleashed a wave of plasma that hit the Tribunal's weapon mid-charge. Sparks danced like cosmic confetti, and the dreadnought's cannon flickered, sputtered, and died with a pitiful whine. "Nice," Jack said, breathless. "Very decisive." Lyra turned to him, eyes shining. "Freedom, Jax. It's messy, but it's ours." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Yeah, ours." Manny's voice came back, trembling but awed. "You did it. You actually did it." Jax looked at Lyra, his heart pounding in rhythm with the rust bucket's hum. "We did it," he corrected. She tilted her head, eyes soft but dangerous. "Then let us see where the stars take us next." He nodded, the grin splitting his face. "Somewhere with fewer tentacles, maybe." She laughed, that sound that made the darkness feel less heavy. "I'm not picky." Together, they turned to the stars, the Tribunals, dreadnought drifting powerless in their wake. The rust bucket rumbled in approval, and for the first time in forever, Jax felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be, beside a vampire-blooded alien queen who taught him that sometimes the best way to fight the darkness was with a grin and a plasma bolt. The galaxy waited, and for once he couldn't wait to meet it head-on.